Mortgage Keeper was supposed to be a joke. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your hashtag not sponsored cheap coffee. Let's check out this article from Domain because this is concerning me. Mortgage Keeper was a joke I made years ago now during the lockdowns and all the craziness where they had the government handing out money left, right and centre, making the joke that, they'll be paying for people's mortgages soon. That was a joke, okay? It wasn't a prediction. It's not a prediction. It was a joke. It's meant to be a joke. This stuff is meant to be a joke. It's not meant to be real. So many Australians face losing their homes right now. Here's how the government should help. Okay. Are we going to see suggestions that people are able to access their superannuation, reduce taxes on staples, reduce taxes on petrol, or on, reduce some of the sin taxes so more people have money in their pocket? Are we going to see those suggestions? Or the government buying a part of your house for you? What do you reckon? So, an important principle was invoked by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese last week in defence of the government's future Made in Australia industry policy announcement. Oh boy. There's a role for government sometimes in just providing support to get over the hump, Albanese said. For otherwise sustainable companies facing rough patches in the quest to diversify Australia's manufacturing base. Okay, so this is... How is keeping Australians in their homes going to be helped by keeping zombie companies alive? Here's the thing. You have people arguing for tariffs to prop up local industries when, for a consumer, as much as everyone yells, Aussie, 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 oi, 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 buy Australian made, do this, when they go to Bunnings and they want the cheapest product, they will get the imported product. Okay, all that nationalism, it all flies out the window when it comes to the wallet. The same principle underpins the HomeKeeper program I proposed in the conversation last year. Who wrote this? Where do we have this? Who wrote this? Chris Wallace proposed the HomeKeeper program. I hope not. The idea is to help mortgage stress owner-occupiers avoid losing their homes. If it's a good idea for companies, why not for responsible and otherwise financially viable Australians at risk of losing their homes in a cost of living crisis? HomeKeeper... Oh, shit. They are just copying JobKeeper. HomeKeeper is modelled on the pandemic-era JobKeeper program but applies key lessons learned from flaws in JobKeeper's design. Okay. Have we seen all the articles doing the rounds now about the surge in insolvencies, particularly in the construction industry? We've all seen those? Who was talking about that ages ago? Crucially, it's not a handout, nor is it a contingent loan, the shortcomings of which higher education contribution scheme debts have made painfully clear. Rather, it's government help through a small equity stake with positive returns for taxpayers when HomeKeeper help is no longer needed. So, I mean, just think about this, guys. If you're sitting there waiting on the sidelines, hoping for property to crash and correct, expecting people to be forced to sell because maybe they borrowed too much, they pushed themselves too far, they believed the hype when the interest rates were low, and you thought, okay, they'll get their comeuppance. Woe is to them, but they're going to learn a valuable lesson. No, the government's now. We're having calls for the government to come to the rescue to help people. Do you think if the government owned a stake in hundreds of thousands of Aussie homes directly, that they will ever allow a correction to house prices? That we wouldn't have... Shit, I mean, just imagine the drive to increase the housing price bubble here in Australia. How high would that go? This is dangerous. This is the problem. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. This sounds like a good intention. It sounds like a good idea. Helping our poor, struggling Aussie families, with a little bit of money here. Okay, but you've got to draw the line somewhere. Rather than giving money to people in times like this, how about you stop taking so much from them? Maybe let them keep a little bit more of their pay packet, rather than hoovering it all up. Mortgage stress owner occupiers could get some breathing space to recapitalize, with government making their mortgage payments direct to the homeowner's bank up to 25 grand overall ceiling. Okay, it's only 25 grand, Florian. It's not that much. Yes, that's the beginning. What was income tax when it first came in? What was it? I think the top 1% in America when they rolled it out was paying 1%. What's it now? Okay, sometimes you've got to be the grumpy old bastard and see the negative potential outcomes of these good intentions. That's your responsibility, okay? Fellow grumpy old middle-aged blokes there, you've got to paint reality to the younger generations, because a lot of them are going to fall for this shit hook, line, and sinker. And then in 10 years' time, they'll bitch and moan that they can't afford a house. They'll be on a current affair going, oh, I can't afford a house, you know, there's too many on their shared equity, I need more handouts, more support. We've seen it all before. We'll see it again. In exchange, the government own a small equity stake in the property. Will they contribute to the maintenance of the property? What if it all goes to shits? Oh, this equal to the value of the mortgage aid as a proportion of the property's market value at the time. Government would get its proportionate share back at market value later when the ownership of the property next turned over, or sooner if the homeowner chose. They're getting more than they need anyway. Every time you pay stamp duty, they get their blood from the stone. How about you just cut stamp duty so people who are buying these houses don't have to throw as much to the government? It's good for the homeowner, good for the taxpayer, good in a way it stops already way too long rental queues and homelessness from worsening. Okay, here's the other side of the argument. What about a bunch of people who would be forced to sell, that creates new stock on the market, gives an opportunity for younger people to come in and swoop it up, or for more property to be added to the rental pool? Oh, this was meant to be a joke. Okay? People need help now. The HomeKeeper would be of most help to lower income families who often don't have a bank of mum or dad to help them over the hump, as Albanese puts it, during temporary difficulties. Well, with a relatively low ceiling on the overall assistance, it would make a real difference to families of modest means, but be of no real help and therefore of little interest to McMansion owners needing large-scale assistance to avoid forced sales. Crossbenchers see the benefits. Independent MP for Goldstein, Zoe Daniel, canvassed HomeKeeper in Parliament in December, noting the assistance would go straight from the government to the bank, ensuring it didn't add to consumption and inflation. ACT Independent Senator David Pocock backed HomeKeeper last week in his additional comments to the Senate Economics Legislation Committee report, on the government helping to buy bill. This is a vote winner. Okay, this is a vote winner. The average punter is going to see this and they'll feel sorry for the person doing it tough. They'll think it's a good idea. How can we help people understand the long-term potential ramifications of this? I'm genuinely asking this as a question. Given expectations that house prices will generally continue to rise for the foreseeable future, the taxpayer would typically benefit to that extent from the repayment, that is, reflecting the size of the government's equity stake. Yep. Pocock wants the government's help to buy mechanism amended to enable low and middle class earners facing mortgage repossession and possible homelessness to remain in home ownership via a HomeKeeper style program. Okay, it's sad when people lose their homes. It happens. But how many people lost them during the pandemic? How many mechanisms and schemes do we have in place to protect people from mortgages that they can't afford? We've already got the 3% buffers that APRA is putting on everywhere. We're not in a free market here, guys. We're in a very regulated and controlled market. All of these things add costs. All of these things reduce opportunities for people to get into property. But we're Australia. We are a nanny state of a nation. Australia is such a nanny state of a nation. Once you just accept that and realize that's the the ideology that people are pushing forward, it gets a lot easier just to not get too upset. Establishing HomeKeeper is more important than ever because the monetary policy script isn't following the arc politicians and policymakers planned. Internationally and nationally, inflation is easing, but more slowly and fitfully than hoped. Predictions that cuts would come sooner rather than later have been dashed more than once when reported US economic data was stronger than expected, or when markets were affected by upticks in international conflict. Now, here's the thing, guys. What's the cash rate? Do I have it? Hang on. The RBA cash rate. There we go. Have I updated that? I have. I mean, if you look historically at that line there, we're, from 2008 before the GFC, we're now at normal levels. What we've had recently was abnormal. It was, the official term I think is utterly batshit crazy at 0.1%. Even if we see a rate cut, you're going to get, 25 points off it. If that's enough to tip you over the edge, you're sailing mighty close already. You've got to make some drastic changes. Throughout Australia has been expected to begin cutting rates last among the world's industrialised nations, since it was the last to begin ramping rates up and the economy kept pumping along strongly. Tightening the budget screws, the Albanese government is counting on multiple rate cuts in the run-up to the next federal election, due to be called by next April to put voters in a better mood. Yeah, oh well. Didn't it come out Albo's lying at some protest? I haven't looked into it. Sounds like him. At 31%, Labour support risks sliding into the 20s, according to the Redbridge Group's pollster, Kos Samaras. Albanese's net approval rating is barely ahead of Dutton's. Both are negative, suggesting a pox on both your houses' sentiment among voters. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting at the next election. So relying on interest rate relief to arrive isn't enough. Fiscal policy is doing its bit to help turn the tide on interest rates. Sustained efforts by Treasurer Jim Chalmers and Finance Minister Senator Kathy Gallagher has turned around the dire budget balance and debt mountain inherited from the Morrison government. The latest IMF figures on G20 nations released this week show Australia now has the second strongest net budget balance and fourth lowest net debt in the industrialised world, a remarkable effort. Yet interest rates in Australia are not falling. What's more, even without further rate increases by the RBA this year, the average mortgage rate is set to rise anyway, according to research by the RBA's Domestic Markets Department, Benjamin Ong. Little wonder then that mortgage stress is extensive and worsening. Nearly a third, 31.4% of mortgage owner-occupiers are at risk of mortgage stress, according to the latest Roy Morgan survey. Nearly 1 in 5 are extremely at risk. Many mortgage owner-occupiers are at and beyond the end of their tether, as more and more of them face voluntary self-initiated house sales, or worse, forced sales by their banks. In his McKell Institute lecture in February, Chalmers declared he was committed to relief and reform, not one or the other. Monetary policy pinch points don't need to and shouldn't throw financially responsible and otherwise viable mortgage-stressed owner-occupiers onto the retail queue or into homelessness. Is everyone forgetting what the biggest cost that all of us pay that's hoovered out of people's bank accounts every week or every month? I would argue, rather than forget this bloody roundabout mortgage keeper bullshit or home keeper. Forget that. Just let owner-occupiers, let them write off the interest costs on their taxes for their primary residence. Pay for your own housing before you pay the state to provide housing to others. Doesn't charity begin at home? Isn't taxes just forced charity? Wonder why they're not putting that policy forward. Next month's budget is an opportunity for the government to move beyond its I feel your pain rhetoric to a HomeKeeper style policy for this particular group of temporarily squeezed Australians. Yeah, this is a vote winner. If they push this forward, it'll win some votes. Even for the people who will never need anything like this, they would support it simply to help people doing it tough. I can understand why, but there's a danger here. There's a real danger here. It'll be too late for those who've already lost their homes. Yeah, but okay, not that many people have lost their homes. The rate of failing mortgages or troubled lending from the bank, it's still below pre-pandemic levels. I'll have to check the latest figures, guys. Where's this brink? Where's this collapse that we're all waiting for? It could prove decisive at the margins to save a lot of others currently weighing up whether tents or cars are their best bet for shelter as the banks move in on their homes. These Australians don't deserve to be incidental victims in government's pursuit of the worthy goal of low inflation. That's just... Okay, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Okay? You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't intervene in the market to push inflation low and not expect to reap the consequences of that intervention. This is that consequence. There are going to be other people who are middle class, who you'll push out of their jobs, who will also fall over and not be able to make their mortgage repayments, but you don't give a shit about them because they're not in the bracket here that you'll give your little crumbs to win votes. This is the price you pay. This is why you've got to... there's two types of people. There's one who expect the government to have their back and take care of them. Then there's the other who don't trust them and don't expect other people to help them. Okay. It can say real people. We'll see. Albanese's right. Sometimes it's a role of government providing help to get over the hump. What if Albanese is the hump? Well, let's have a talk about this one, guys. It's JobKeeper, isn't it? So we're seeing talk of shared equity. We're seeing talk of JobKeeper. What do you reckon, guys? What would you rather? I would argue let people access their super, let people write off the cost of the interest on their mortgages for their primary residence before we do stuff like this. Let me know your opinion. Take care. Have a great day. I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.